You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. I'm Steven Willis, the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. In just a second, we're going to be joined by Mike Huesmann from Mike Farrell Sports, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about Ole Miss and Arkansas and Jackson Dart, and then just college football as a whole. But I do want to let you know that this show, like most every show, is brought to you by, let's see, I need to do this because this is bad pod. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Yeah, it was really, really bad pod. But we'll bring in Mike Huesmann right now. How we doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, Steven. Yeah, glad to be here. Always a pleasure. This is the first time on with you this season so far.
Yeah. Last year, I believe in your other career, there was some scheduling conflicts that popped up, and then it just kind of out of sight, out of mind type stuff. And then whenever you commented on a tweet the other day, I was like, oh man, we need to get Mike back on the show.
That is correct. Yeah, it's kind of so I'm a professor in my other life, and the one in-person class that I was teaching was at night from 6:30 to 9:30. So yes, that was why.
So this is an interesting game from a national perspective. Ole Miss and Arkansas has always been one of those drunk type games. Weird stuff happens. It's absolutely nuts. But this game provides a little bit of normalcy because Ole Miss is going for their 5th win out of their last 7 games against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Although they have not won in Fayetteville yet. That's kind of the last hump that they'll need to get over with. And Jackson Dart, if he wins the game, will become the winningest quarterback in Ole Miss history. He is likely going to become the all-time total offense record holder, and he is going to move closer to second place in passing yards, another record that he's likely to break this season. He's in line to break every major record, as I talked about in the offseason, that Ole Miss has, and I think it just flies under the radar at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's the longevity he has had in a tough conference has surprised me. I'll be the first to say I was skeptical. After his first year, he played and was okay. And, following the portal and the coaching carousel like I do, I thought Spencer Sanders might be a threat to him when he came in from Oklahoma State. Clearly that didn't happen. And Dart has looked fantastic since then.
What did you read off of Taylor Green?
He's good. I didn't think he would be this much of an upgrade over KJ Jefferson when they brought him in, but I think that speaks to Bobby Petrino knew he needed a guy that was going to fit his system, which was to save, their jobs by extension. But Green has played well. He played well at Boise. We now know that wasn't just because they were handing off to Ginty all the time, though. That certainly helped a lot. But he's what Petrino needs to run that offense, and they're doing a lot of things above average. I wouldn't say they're great at any one thing, though.
They're doing a lot of stuff to me from the outside looking in that Bobby Petrino did when he had Lamar Jackson at Louisville. Now, I'm not saying that this guy's Lamar Jackson. Do not hear that. I'm saying that he's athletic enough that you can get away with doing some of the same things.
Yes. And the thing they are doing that good Petrino teams have done that a lot of good football teams do, they're running the ball a lot in a lot of different formations. They're running maybe 5 or 6 different base plays out of a bunch of formations and looks, and they're getting at people that way.
Yeah, and their running game, I think they have 22 rushing touchdowns this season so far, and Ole Miss has given up one rushing touchdown this whole season, and that was on that fluke touchdown that Kentucky scored that beat them to where they fumbled into the end zone.
I didn't realize they were that good at stopping the run, especially near the goal line. The one thing I think where Ole Miss, will have an advantage is Arkansas's defense is very average. If you look statistically, they're 55th in the country. They're allowing well over 300 yards a game. And on third down especially, their defense is struggling. It did some looking into that. So especially if Ole Miss can get in third and manageables, they could have a lot of success there in moving the chains consistently.
Yeah, take away the ghost and goblins and all that and playing in Fayetteville. If Ole Miss plays clean and turnover free, Ole Miss wins this game.
Yes. Absolutely. They their athletes on offense are better than Arkansas's athletes on defense by a pretty good margin, I think. Not that Arkansas is bad on defense. We just talked about some of those numbers.
They're legitimately good, yeah.
Yeah. But especially at the back, I don't know that they're, just those athletes that Ole Miss has, going to be able to run with them and play in space.
Ole Miss in SEC play has had a little bit of trouble running the football. Henry Parrish did all right in non-conference play, but it was non-conference play. Ulysses Bentley is the one Rebel that has run for 100 yards in an SEC game. He's not playing all that much. Yeah. What do you think, and how important will the run game be in this Arkansas game and to get ready for the Georgia game the next week?
So I think against Arkansas, it will be important in a few ways. We know Arkansas will try to run the ball on them, and at times they will have success doing it. So you're going to need to run the ball to keep your defense off the field all the game. You can't have those guys out there the whole time. And I think especially in the throwing game, the way Arkansas plays on D, Priestcorn could have a lot of success. If Ole Miss is running the ball well, creating that space in the middle could be very good for Priestcorn.
Yeah, and I always like to joke about it. My everydayers that watch the show and insiders and all that can tell you that I always talk about when Lane Kiffin's offense is at its best, they are torturing linebackers. The linebackers cannot be right. And that is going to require Ole Miss to be a threat running the football. That is going to require Ole Miss to be a threat behind the linebackers, right behind that, and going side to side. And I think in the Kentucky game and in the LSU game, Ole Miss got a little bit predictable offensively, and they weren't doing all of the things that needed to happen, and they were just relying on how good of a wide receiver Trey Harris is.
Yeah, so in some of my mid-season report stuff that I did that's solely focused on coaching, I was kind of critical of Kiffin for that. I felt like in some ways they've not met expectations. 6-2 is a fine record, but a lot of people thought they were going to be one of those teams that would be in the 12-team playoff. They certainly still can be, but they also looked kind of pedestrian in some of those early games, and at times, even in games they won. Now, I certainly think they can turn it around, and the results have been there. But I think that piggybacks off of your point, well, they're just outdoing people in a lot of those games.
Yeah, just a weird type situation. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, we'll talk to Mike about the 12-team playoffs and how this is going to happen over the next couple of weeks with the first poll coming out on Tuesday. So stick around for that. Game Time is your place to get Ole Miss tickets. Sorry about this. I'm reading the wrong thing. Sorry. It's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. I'm super smart and super on my game today. So far this season, we pulled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring all the funds go to a specific player that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. And this week, I am supporting Suntarian Perkins. I just pitched in $100 in his Roy account, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Suntarian Perkins the love, and help him keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets up the team for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter the referral code Locked On. That's 2 words, and you are interested. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase is necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy right now to join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more information. Roy, support the players, change the game. All right, we're joining Mike Huesmann, and we're going to start talking about 12-team playoff at this point. Ole Miss is in the next 4 in or something. They're very much on the fringe of what's going on. And honestly, if Ole Miss beats Georgia, they're going to be right on the cusp of it. That win will do everything that's necessary. But Ole Miss needs to beat Arkansas first. And I've told people the whole time, there's like style points matter. Everything matters in this thing. You need to do this. You need to cover against Oklahoma. And I was like, no, just win the games. If you win out, you're going to end up probably 3rd in the SEC and sitting in the playoffs. Now, you're going to be traveling in the playoffs, but you're going to be in the tournament.
Yeah. And that's one area I think the SEC and Big Ten schools will have some advantage. Even if they're on the road, there'll be teams that are used to playing big road games that are meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, and pretty good. And it was like it could be Ole Miss going to Notre Dame or Ole Miss going
Penn
to Penn State, something like that. Yeah. Which would be an unbelievably cool matchup. Now, as an Ole Miss fan, we saw the Ole Miss Penn State game a year ago, so it would be nice to see another one. But
maybe they'll go to Knoxville, who they didn't play in conference play this year.
It would be absolutely hilarious if they went to Indiana. I mean, if we're just going to be real about it.
Yeah.
So, but if Ole Miss wins out, they should likely get into the tournament, which is the goal that Ole Miss set before this season. Everything's in front of them. And that is why this Arkansas game is so important. You want it to get to Georgia with the opportunity to play the game with all of that on the line, everything available. And if Ole Miss can get that win, that program-defining win, everything is going to be right in the Ole Miss sphere.
Certainly. Yeah. And I think another thing you touched on, you got to get past Arkansas. Georgia's obviously the game everybody is circling, looking at, beating Georgia. That's the big one. But there are 2 other decent teams on that schedule, and the Egg Bowl, which is, the cliche. You can throw the records out for that one.
Yeah, and it would be absolutely crazy with Jeff Lebby coming into Oxford and all. Yeah, there's going to be a sideshow element of that game because there always is a sideshow element to that game.
Yeah.
But I like Pete Golden's chance going up against a true freshman quarterback in both cases after Georgia.
And a team who cannot run the ball in Mississippi State, basically.
Both of those matchups, the Florida game will be difficult. The Arkansas game will be difficult because they're at 11 o'clock on the road.
Yeah.
The Georgia game will be difficult because they're the most talented team in college football.
Yeah. The Swamp will be a tough place to play. It is for anybody. And there's the added layer there of Billy might be playing for his job or coaching for his job in that one.
And honestly, he shouldn't be at this point.
I actually think he's done a decent job. The only games they've lost this year are the games we expected them to lose.
It would not surprise me at all, honestly, if they upset Texas. It would not surprise me even a little bit. It also wouldn't surprise me if they go winless all the way out, including a loss to Florida State. I mean, the ceiling and the floor of this program is absolutely through the roof.
It is. Yeah, they need to win 2 more games to go to a bowl game, which will save his job. You got to figure they'll probably get FSU with one of them, but both LSU and Ole Miss go to the Swamp. And then, like you said, Texas, Georgia, what Florida team is going to show up, we don't know.
Yeah. It should be pretty interesting. If you look around the SEC right now, And we're going to, just in case there's any comments in the comment section, we're going to hit those in the third segment. So anybody that has that, and also if you comment, be sure and put where you're commenting from, because we are interested about that. But the SEC this year has a chance to have every team with 2 losses. That is a real possibility.
Yes.
This year, there could be 6 teams with 2 losses. And if that happens, is throwing a dart at the dartboard for the playoff.
Yeah, I think right now, what is it? 11 teams in the conference have 0, 1, or 2 losses. Like, it's the math is so wonky at this point. It's tough to predict who will even make the conference title game, because it gets convoluted in what the tiebreakers are going to be.
Yeah, and the absolutely hilarious thing, and Texas A&M fans, don't get mad at me because I'm just being honest about this, but Texas A&M going and losing to South Carolina would be absolutely on brand for them.
So we all know I'm a Gamecock. That's my grad school, so I would love it. Yeah. The other thing I think is wild, the potential of, and by the way, South Carolina, what they do on defense could give A&M problems, because they got good D-back and the red rushers are nasty. But the wild one to me that could happen would be A&M versus Texas 2 weeks in a row.
It could happen. Yeah. Absolutely could happen.
It involved Georgia losing another one, but it could.
And Georgia has a couple of big games left on their schedule that they're going to have to deal with. That it could actually be a problem. I think it will be hilarious that the fact that the Alabama LSU game is honestly a true elimination game.
Yes.
Now, the loser of that game is ReliaQuest bowl bound.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have players opting out like crazy.
Yeah. Oh, you will. And not that it will, like, it'll make a difference for conference title games, so to speak, but the Georgia-Tennessee game, whoever wins that game probably makes the playoffs. Because whether they lose one after that, if that's only your second loss, whoever wins that one's going to be in the playoffs, I think.
I think that Georgia should probably beat Tennessee. That'll be Tennessee's second loss.
It would be their second
I think Ole Miss has a real chance to beat Georgia, and I think it would be absolutely hilarious if Vanderbilt beat Tennessee. I think that would be the height of comedy if Vanderbilt knocked Tennessee out of the playoff.
Oh God, I mean, that would make beating Bama and Tennessee in 1 year. They would be loving themselves.
Yeah. So, okay, just for everybody that doesn't know, Mike does a lot of work around the transfer portal. Obviously, he's a big contributor on our show and our channel because of that, because everybody knows how Ole Miss recruits. Any names that are popping out early on that you need to probably keep an eye on if you're an Ole Miss fan?
At this point, I would say probably not, just because we don't know the full scope of who's all going to be in the portal and what positions they will be going after. One guy I think that could possibly be on the radar would be LaShawn Williams, who left Iowa, was expected to be their starting running back in fall camp before Caleb Johnson took over. He is a bigger kid, 215, 220, a solid guy, in between the tackle type runner. And it's a position they're going to have multiple guys playing. Lane always has a lot of guys playing there. So I think skill-wise, he could be one. Another one within the SEC, I wonder if Jaheim Otis could end up there from Alabama. Great big tackle.
I honestly do think that Jaheim Otis ends up at Ole Miss. Yeah.
And he's,
that's just like reading tea leaves and just guessing what's going on. But nothing has been said about that. But Ole Miss recruited the heck out of him. He committed to Alabama with Pete Golding. Pete Golding goes to Ole Miss.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And with the new defensive staff coming in, not playing a different type system, all of a sudden Jaheim Otis quit playing as much. And Alabama's defense, my goodness, it has looked unbelievably pedestrian this season.
Yeah. Another guy who most people won't know, but DJ Warnell was a safety at Indiana and hasn't really stood out a ton, but he's in the portal and he looks like the body type of those nickel, slot guys that Ole Miss and Golding likes on defense, 6'3", 6'4", real rangy. So Warnell could be a guy I think to look at. He had a lot of P4 looks and offers coming out of high school. So Warnell could be a guy to look at too.
Yeah, and everybody needs to realize Ole Miss is going to be unbelievably they're going to be busy in the transfer portal because Ole Miss has about 55 players that they're going to have to replace next season.
Oh, geez. Wow.
Yeah, it's a large number. So just be ready for a busy portal season, essentially.
What do you think they will do in the quarterback situation for next year?
Oh, Austin Simmons is going to be the quarterback.
He will be. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as Austin Simmons and Ole Miss, he's going to be the quarterback. I refer to him as Tua with 4 more inches.
Okay.
Yeah. He is really, really good. And he has been the undisputed backup for Ole Miss all year this year. He beat out Walker Howard.
Yeah. Which is another interesting portal because Walker Howard will have P4 interest in the portal. I mean, there's a decent chance he starts somewhere next year. He's a player.
My guess is Walker Howard's going to end up at ULL.
He could. Yeah.
I mean, he's from there. And
but even with him, like looking at the rosters, he's better than anybody Auburn has. He could go there.
I think the next quarterback at Auburn, and he's not in the portal yet, but I think it's going to be Caden Salter from Liberty.
He certainly would fit. A lot of us were kind of surprised before when almost no one followed Freeze in the portal. I mean, he didn't take any of the players with him, which was and it's tough to say. Did he not want them? Did they not want to go with him? We're not going to really know those answers. But I find it hard to believe, even if you dislike the coach a little, you're not going to go be an SEC starter. It just doesn't seem logical.
As somebody that had an office right next door to Hugh Freeze, I'm not surprised.
Okay.
Honestly, I will just leave it at that. There's a nice political aspect that he does of putting things on for recruiting. He does a very good job. It rubs you weird whenever you have to see it every day.
I can see that. Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for watching the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. When we come back, we will look at your comments and we will continue to talk about college football as a whole, the transfer portal, coaching, whatever hits our fancy. So stick around for that. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place your live bets on the NFL all in one place. Ole Miss is currently favored by 7.5 points over the Arkansas Razorbacks, but we all know how weird this series can be. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're back with Mike Huesmann, and we're going to close it out. Let's go into the comments section and see if anybody has some good stuff for us today. Christopher Paul Sr., Ole Miss will win something like 31-6 or something like that. It won't be close. Just so everybody knows, that is Chris Paul's daddy. That is Pooh Paul's dad, the linebacker from Ole Miss. So obviously, Pooh Paul is going back to Arkansas. So there's probably some meaning assigning to that fantasy or to that family.
We're being brash about that one. That would be a flattering scoreline to say the least.
Yeah, that's somebody that transferred from Arkansas to Ole Miss, and I
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty good. Travis Adair, I think Arkansas is better than that. Plus, Ole Miss hasn't cracked the 30-point mark the last 4 games, 24-20 Ole Miss. I think it's somewhere in the ballpark. Personally, I haven't done a final score yet, Mike, but I'm thinking somewhere like 28-17 is kind of where I'm putting the game.
I'm in between this guy and you. I'm thinking in that 23 or 24 to 16 or 17-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zachary Bramble said this game will be decided by Ole Miss's mentality. If they're still feeling the burden of the last dance, then they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. They need to trust themselves and have fun. You know, Mike, in that Oklahoma game, Ole Miss found an identity in that third quarter, and you can go look at the stats from the third quarter. Jackson Dart had 1 incomplete pass, threw for 180 yards. Ole Miss had 200 yards of offense. They held the ball for 8.5 minutes in that game. Oklahoma had 23 yards on 12 plays and gained 1 first down. It was the result of that joyless murder ball that Ole Miss kind of a little bit stuck their toe in the water in the first half, but completely committed to in the third quarter.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the importance of running the ball earlier, and in past years when Lane has had success, they've ran the ball well, and I think, you know, maybe they figured out a run identity that works for them. Maybe he was going back to the old ways of this got us here in the past, and they did it. Yeah.
Travis Adair says this game isn't going to be a blowout. It's probably not, and this game is never a blowout.
No.
I kind of wonder if Ole Miss has their head on straight and not looking ahead to Georgia. Ole Miss's head is on straight. Ole Miss's head is absolutely on straight.
Arkansas is not one of those teams that you're going to look past. Like they're not one of them that preseason we're circling. This is the game, but you also know you got to get up for them, and that you can't just mail it in and expect to get a W.
Yeah, and Ole Miss hasn't had the success in Fayetteville to allow them to be cocky. In 2022, it was that weird game that Arkansas had 30 points at halftime. And then in 2020 was the Matt Corral 6 interception game. Weird things happen up there.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that ghosts and goblins that they'll be dealing with in Arkansas. Let's see. James McDonald said, I can see us playing like we did against South Carolina. If we do, we cover plus more. Travis Adair with the question, Steve, what's your opinion on them making the playoffs? Is there 5 or 6, 10, and if there's 5 or 6, 10 and 2 teams? It all depends on who they lose to. If Ole Miss wins out with a win at Georgia, they will have the best win tied with Arkansas or Alabama on the resume, essentially beating Georgia. If Ole Miss wins out, I mean, you have LSU that was an overtime victor over Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not going to be punished for that. Ole Miss might be punished for Kentucky. Ole Miss deserves to be punished if we're going to be real about Kentucky. So, and finally, James McDonald said the defense has been really impressive up front. Listen, Mike, I was looking at the stats, and Ole Miss is leading the nation in tackles for loss by over 10 over number 2 in the NCAA.
Wow.
Yeah. They have 81 tackles for loss so far, and then Duke is second at 70.
And Duke doing that is not surprising because Manny Diaz is always extremely aggressive, and they let the corners stay on islands. My question to you, and I don't know the answer, I'm actually asking you this. If they're having that many tackles for loss, are they also giving up a lot of big plays? Because the two often go hand in hand because you're being aggressive.
Yeah, they're not. They're not at all. The defense is legitimately good. They're number 1 in the nation in scoring defense.
Yeah.
So, see, we got one more question, then we're going to get out of here. Travis Adair says, Steve, are you going to love it if the Dodgers close out the Yankees tonight? Listen, I want this to go 7 series because they are putting up Super Bowl level numbers in the series. I mean, they're getting 30 or 40 million internationally to watch each World Series game. So it needs to go on. The Yankees kind of need to wake up and make it at least go 6. But Dodgers close out the Yankees tonight. I mean, I'll be fine with it because they're the Yankees, and I'm not a Lakers fan, and I'm not a Cowboys fan, and you know.
Yeah, I was following up until like a few minutes ago. Who did the Dodgers decide to start tonight? Because it was still TBD.
They're doing a bullpen game tonight.
Okay, I mean, I probably would too because if you got your 3 good starters, you figure one of those three can get a win on full rest in it, if it goes past tonight.
All right. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mike Huesmann, big thanks for coming on the show this week. What do you got going on this weekend?
Not much. Just going to watch ball, like most weekends. As you can see behind me, I'm working at Marshall. So Marshall plays ULM at home. So I'm sure, being an SEC fan, you've seen your share of ULM non-conference games, but we got them in Sunbelt play, and actually ULM is resurgent this year with Brian Vincent, so probably go to that game. It should be a good time.
All right. Thanks a lot for coming on the show tonight. We'll talk to you later, buddy.
Glad to be here. See ya.